Okay, Cheryl Pounder, two-time Olympic gold medal for the Canadian women's team. I have to say, huge honor to be doing this. Such a massive fan of yours. Yeah, I didn't really think when starting this I'd be able to talk to individuals like yourself. So this is a really big deal for me. So thank you.
No, thanks for having me on.
So Cheryl, walk us through your journey of becoming a professional Canadian women hockey player with the Mississauga Chiefs, and then competing in the Winter Olympics.
Oh, geez, and I think about it, it's incredible, really. It started, on a backyard rink, really, with siblings, three other siblings, two boys, one girl, playing road hockey, and the usual, wanting to play a sport that I wasn't supposed to play. I remember being chased around at Port Credit Arena because I made a boys team when I was young, and I got chased into a dressing room by an angry parent. So it starts quite young, the journey. But really, I started playing Mississauga with the Mississauga Chiefs, and I was an MGHL girl through and through. I still live in Mississauga, and I started playing there. And at the time, Mississauga had a great league. The numbers were strong, and it was considered, much like Brampton, one of the strongest organizations. And so I was playing there and loving it. And then I got to a point. I was around 15 years of age, and I was probably one of the strongest members on my team, and there was really nowhere to go. So I moved to Toronto. Well, I did move to Toronto. Thank you, parents, for lending me your car after I hit 16, and letting me go to Toronto and playing for a great coach, Ken Duffy with the Toronto Arrows, which became a sort of a legacy organization that really sort of wrote the rule with respect to professionalism in team sport for women's hockey. And had a lot of success there. Went on to make a few provincial teams and on to the Olympics. But when I came back to finish my career, Vince, the irony of it is that my last year was actually played in Mississauga. I had my daughter, and I will never forget. That was where my career started. Sort of Hazel McCallion dropped the first puck, the first game I ever played at, and the last. So thank you, Hazel, the Hurricane, for being a part of the journey. But I remember that final game in Mississauga. So we won the national championships in Prince Edward Island, but I finished the career with the Mississauga team, and looking up in the stands and seeing my daughter. And she was only, 6, 7 weeks old. And I remember playing and thinking, wow, this has really come full circle. And the opportunities that are now out there for her, having been to the Olympics 2 times by that point, and watching sort of the growth of the game was pretty tremendous. And I'll never forget, having all my teammates support me, because I was one of the first ones sort of to have a baby and come back. The nursing in the dressing room, I might add, is quite interesting when your daughter all of a sudden has 20 other aunties, because you're nursing in the dressing room, and they're all kind of laughing and looking because they're young. But no, it was just a great experience, but a journey that had a lot of ups and downs along the way.
I was reading, Cheryl, that your family impacted a lot in your hockey journey.
Yeah.
And that was really cool to see, because my dad was obviously a huge influence on me playing hockey and going through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it goes every for my grandparents. I mean, I'm often talking about my grandparents, my grandmother in particular, who was supposed to be in that movie, well, in the League of Her Own, sort of the movie, because she had a contract for Wrigley Field in the 1940s, and she was a woman who said, you know what, I'm not going to go. And I knew her story. And so by the time I, got to the age of, 8, 9, when I was like, I'm going to the Olympics, Mom, I'm going to the Olympics, Grandma, I knew her story. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She just said, Cheryl, believe in yourself, give it everything you've got. You'll never know unless you try. And so, I sort of got those words of encouragement at a very young age from a woman who didn't feel at the time that she could sort of leave her family to pursue her dream athletically. And so, those words of encouragement really sort of sat on my shoulder throughout my career, saying, you can do this. And of course, you have to have, supportive parents, because, I wasn't making any money in women's hockey. That's as the career went on. So I was living at home. But early on, there was a lot of naysayers, why is she in a men's sport, and why is she playing? And, why isn't she playing ringette? And I did start there, and there's nothing wrong with great skating game, but my passion was for hockey. And I had parents that said, well, why not? Like, why not her? And then, of course, siblings who, would beat me up, but it was all good. Gave me a lot of strength and the ability to get back up. But again, they were very supportive. And I remember my brother in '02, he wasn't able to make it to the Olympics. And he was the first guy I called outside of, outside of my family. Well, first guy called outside of being at the rink with my family. And, he was bawling. He was having a house party. I don't know if my parents love that. But anyway, bawling because he'd been there every step of the way kind of thing. So, I think it takes a real village to support dreams, and whether they're, no matter what they are, you need support in your lives and from the community to be able to achieve what you believe you can. And so I'm very blessed to have a husband who said, "Yeah, keep going, girl. Keep going." And it takes that kind of support for someone to really see the dream that you have. Because for my husband, he had to let me go for 2 years, or 2 full years. And I say let me go, because he wasn't sure if he was getting me back. But it was really, centralization. In '02, you leave for a full year. And in '06, I left for a full year. So, financially and emotionally, that support was so required or needed in order to be successful.
Before I ask the next question, Cheryl, I remember watching you play, and I always noticed that you had a great vision to see the ice and good two-way defenseman, which I really.
Yeah, well, I think one of my defense partners on the national team, a great friend of mine, Becky Keller, and I, we always say to kids today, take care of your house first. And so be strong defensively, and work on your agility and your explosiveness, because, of course, for a defenseman, it's, front of the net to the corner. And so, we took great pride in taking care of sort of our own zone first. And I think that's sort of why we stayed on the national team for a number of years, because we weren't, we were okay to be the defensive player, and take care of business at home, and then have the ability to sort of to move it north when we needed to. So, but a lot of learnings around that too, because I think every young player as a defenseman just wants to be the goal scorer, right? Or you want to play forward and you get moved back and you're like, no, coach, don't do it. But at the end of the day, it brings a whole different skill set, and I think it's really important for young kids in particular to try both positions.
Cheryl, do you have any standout memories from playing on the Olympics?
Oh wow. Oof. I've got so many memories. It is, which ones I can talk about and which ones I can are two different things. But in '02, it was probably one of the most adverse years of our lives in respect to wins and loss column. We lost the Americans every game we played. And I think one of the great memories I have was before we left for the Olympics, the group that had been at the 1998 Olympics, so the veterans on the team, really pulled and embraced the rookies and brought us away, and really shared with us. And I think the key word there is share. On great teams, you share information so that you can all be more efficient. And I remember being, we were in Emerald Lake and we were talking, and they were sharing everything with us. And they were like, one, we're not tourists once we get there. We are there to put in our personal best performance as individuals and collectively as a group. So we need to take care of ourselves. And then we started talking about potential distractions. I mean, we had 9/11 in '02. There was just a number of things that were sort of in the back of our minds. And so we came out with this distraction list that was like, I don't even know how long. And we had a solution for every distraction. And on the page of second page in the very, very bottom, and I've taken a picture, it's like American official. And so we had a code word for officiating that we didn't think was, fair. We had, solutions for everything, but we had this code word. So in '02, we went up against the Americans in the final game for the very first time all year long. We're playing in the United States. The penalties that we're receiving are incredible. And we score with 1 second remaining in the second period, and we all go in the room. We're jumping and we're screaming, and we literally think it's over because we're just so excited. And all of a sudden, this the quietest girl in our team, which was just a great act of leadership. She stands up, and I can't repeat verbatim what she said because there'd be a lot of beeps, but she starts screaming our code word to bring us back. And we went out on that ice, and 20 minutes later, we won our first Olympic gold medal. And I really believe it took those veterans, the team, to really share for us to be able to do that in that moment. And for the first time, it didn't matter like who was on that ice. It was a matter of us doing our best for the team. And in the end, we ended up with our first gold medal. And that's one memory that I sort of It's always there for me, wrapped in the flag afterwards. One of my best friends looking up at my family, bawling my eyes out, running over to my brother, screaming and crying. And he's crying. And I think this amazing moment, he's running down 10 rows of people yelling, "That's my sister, let me at her." And I didn't even know he loved me. It was amazing, you know. So yeah, it was fantastic. So I think there's a balance in your memories of the actual success versus the journey. And I looked out at my family. I recognized, wow, like this has been a process, and it's about them, as well. And so sharing it has been really integral in sort of the process.
That's so cool. You're right, Cheryl, and that team is everything. So Cheryl, so after your playing career, you then became a play-by-play commentator and motivational speaker, which is completely different from being an athlete. So how did you prepare for both roles?
Well, good question. I think I learned how to prepare. The first one, doing some analysis and color commentary work, I think, I learned on the fly, because I was kind of thrown into it. I hadn't had any formal training. And I think what I learned in that was just because I can play the game doesn't mean I'm going to be good at calling it, because we see the game differently. And what I've learned now is, which I didn't recognize in the moment, because in the moment I just thought, oh, I'm going to walk in and I can analyze this because I know the game intricately. And then I sort of was at a loss for words in my first game. Like I couldn't see what was actually happening because it just was a different angle. It was a different vantage point. So what I needed to learn to do was to see the game differently. And in order to do that, I had to reach out to people who had done it before, see how they prepared. Cassie Campbell Pascal was a great mentor, former team captain for me, but someone who'd been in the game, broadcasting for a number of years and had some, valuable tips in preparation. And you can never do too much work. And I think that's one of the things that people don't always see is, yeah, you make mistakes and you get it wrong sometimes, but the preparation that goes into a game, and you'll know as a podcast, running a podcast, is that you do work on your guests, and you study and you research them. So when you think about a game, when you've got, say, 23 players on both sides, you've got these rosters that you've built, that you've got all this information on every single player, and you may never use it, but you need to be prepared, and also to sit back and trust how you're seeing the game, and learning how to control that, because you still get the energy, that the vibe that comes off a live event. And so for me, yeah, it's been really, really watching and listening to games differently now. So if I'm watching on television, I'm watching, whether it be a Leaf game or any broadcast, it could be football, it could be anything. You listen differently to what the commentators are saying and the information that they're providing. So you want it to be sort of valuable information. And so what they're saying and how they're saying it, and so that's been something that I've taken on. And for me, I recognize warm-ups very important for me, getting into the game, and watching it differently, and thinking about different things. So just like I prepare as an athlete, knowing what is going to get me into my frame of mind to be able to execute is sort of what I have to do, but just sort of from a different angle, if you will. When it comes to speaking, my husband will always say, I never stop talking. So I put it to good use. However, again, I think one of the things I've learned over the years is that you really need to recognize who you're speaking for, what their message is, how you can sort of translate your message while being authentic. Because as an example, like, I'm not a finance guru, but if I'm speaking for a bank, I've got to recognize that I can't reinvent some wheel that I have never been a part of, but I can certainly lend the messaging authentically to what I've been through. And there's always correlations in the work environment and the team environment. So, well, which is obviously they're integrated. But so certainly, I've had to learn who I'm speaking for, what their message is, and more importantly, the audience. When you walk in and everyone's kind of like snoring, you realize that you got to do something right away to get them up, and really reading their vibe, reading how how they're feeling, or whether it's time to cut in for a joke, or whether it's time just to let it go because it's working, and really reading that energy, which makes virtual a little bit different, right? Because we don't have that interaction and that engagement. You don't get to see someone really laugh, right? Because you know they're on the other side of the screen. So that's been a little bit different for me, someone who's very animated. But it's been learned, and I think that it's practice. I mean, like you say to your kids, it's practice, 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 and never be afraid to get it wrong. Reach out, ask for help when you need it, and lean on people around you who're better at it. And that's how we all grow together.
One of my goals, Cheryl, if I have a career in sport and then hopefully a successful career, one of my goals is to become a motivational speaker. 'Cause I listen to them all the time, experiencing motivational speakers like coming to classrooms and whatnot. I always really felt really, really good after it. And that's kind of a long term goal of mine, but I have a long way to go.
Anytime you're speaking everyone has a story. I think that's the biggest thing that people need to recognize is that mine isn't more special because I'm an Olympian. We all have our own stories, and I think the key there is stand on top of your story, whatever it is. It's shaped you. It's helped you grow, the adversity included. Because without adversity and finding ways to be resilient and courageous, I think you know without it becomes very difficult to achieve. So I think everyone's story is different, but it's so valuable. And I mean, I learn from everyone. Learn from my children, co-coaches. I'll sit in on speakers if I'm at an event, and often stay and listen to other speakers, because you know it's our stories and it's how we've learned and how we've grown. So not being afraid to show that you are vulnerable because there's such strength in vulnerability, and I think that's also very, very important.
Sure, how do you share your story with being a motivational speaker? I guess, was it difficult because of how much success that you've had to speak about it and to express to the audience?
Well, I think, there's a component of individuality in any sport, whether it's a team sport. So there's always goals. There's always that mindset that you want, you're driven and you want to be the best, and how you yourself as an individual tried to get there, and how you evolved and grew. But then there's that team component about how you work together and learning that, the efficiency that comes with collaboration is incredible. But really, I think the biggest thing for me, and now when I speak, is I think in order for a team to be great and for an individual to be great, you have to recognize yourself. You have to be very self aware in how you affect others, and also know what makes you tick, right? What are your key attributes? What are your characteristic? What are your dimensions? Are you courageous? Are you accountable? Or are you risk taker? If you're an excessive risk taker, do you need to woo? What are those things that are at your core values? What are your core values? And so I think learning about yourself and how you operate, is very important. And I didn't know that at the beginning of my career. I'm not afraid to say that. I think I became a much stronger leader as I went on because I started to, again, not just be so concerned with the I, which is very important, but the team. And so I think sharing the message of that journey to success. But with that, there was so many variables and change. I mean, change is constant, and we have to learn how to adapt. And for me, it wasn't always easy. I was cut from the team, and I was very vulnerable. I, was down. I had my moments. And so what I did to sort of push to come back, how I came back, and those are very real to me. And I honestly believe that, in hindsight now, that my failures in a way, shapes me differently moving forward. And I had to self-evaluate where I was at each point in my career, and not be afraid to get outside the comfort zone. And I think the fear is stagnating. So, you know, you share sort of all that, but I think change is a big one because nothing stays the same. Look at our environment right now. Like, who would have ever thought we've been sitting here, 4 months later in a pandemic, and my kids are at home. One might run behind me naked soon. It's you just don't know, and so we have to be able to evolve and really look at every moment we're in as an opportunity for something. And so this is an opportunity for you to start a podcast, right? It's an opportunity for me to learn to get outside my comfort zone and go virtual. It's an opportunity for us to all spend time, maybe more time with our kids, eat dinner together, whatever it might be. So opportunity as well. So yeah, I'm big on the leadership, big on standing on top of your own story and change for sure.
I couldn't agree more. Cheryl, in your motivational speeches, I was reading you. You speak about coaching and management styles, and then I saw that you talked about what has worked and what hasn't worked. So I wanted to ask you
Yeah.
the question.
Oh, geez. Well, what's funny is I was sitting with one of my teammates one day and we were talking about this, like, so what are the recipes for us for success versus, well, not necessarily failure, but coaching styles we liked and we thought were successful. And, we'd had, I don't know, a bottle of wine and we were maybe more, and talking about our careers and different for her than me, right? Because we're different people. So coaching styles are different. But for me, I think one of the biggest thing that resonates with me is I want an authentic leader, someone who, does what they say they're going to do. And although I may not like it, I will respect it if it's authentic. If there's something going on in the room and they recognize that something needs to, they don't just sweep it under the rug. They deal with it, they confront it, and effective communication, right? I think there's got to be consistent messaging. It's very difficult for me to achieve what I want to achieve if I don't really fully understand it. And some of that accountability is on me too, right? So I have to ask if I don't understand. It's not a one-way street when it comes to leadership. Whether you're a boss, an employee, or a coach and a player, it's there's onus on the player to reach out and say, okay, I don't understand this. But I think the consistent messaging for me is very important, and having a leader that's not afraid to deal directly and with whatever it is that's hindering that group. But the authenticity, I think that is such a big one, because when you trust and respect and you don't have to like, it's amazing how you will work, or would work under that. And so for me, that was some really, really key elements to being part of a successful group.
And then I was reading, Cheryl, you often speak about the pursuit of excellence, and
Yeah.
every kind of successful person that I've met have really focused on that theme. So, what does that theme mean to you?
Well, I think it's, you have to changing along the way. And I've talked, I talk a lot about the change, and recognizing yourself. And so when you're pursuing excellence, I think you have to really understand where you're at, where you want to get to, and how you need to evolve and change to get to that point. I mean, the team in 2002 was nowhere near the team in 2006, which was nowhere near the team in 2010. And so how do we continually push the envelope to stay on top? And as a Canadian athlete on our hockey team, we were always at the top when I was playing, so everyone was always gunning for us. So I think in the pursuit of excellence, it's so important to recognize that, why are we waiting for failure to change? So in one year, if we're on top, just because we win doesn't mean we can do the same things to win again. We have to think differently in order to be successful, right? We had a great PJ, always, our sports psychologist always said, excellence is abnormal. Therefore, we must behave abnormally to be excellent. There's one team that's going to win here. And so if you want to be it, then you can't do what everyone else is doing. And so for me, the pursuit of excellence is kind of continually looking at that. And also how I contribute as an individual to helping the team be excellent beyond the coach, right? In the culture, like, am I expressing value to my teammates? Because we want to execute our role to the best of our ability when we feel valued, right? Whether I played one national team minute or the whole game, if I felt that the role I had was valued by my peers, like, I would do it. Like, I'd throw my head in front of that puck for them, right? So how do we express value also to also create that environment, which is an environment that grows towards excellence. You don't just get it, right? So I think that's it's constant. It's constant learning.
I've always noticed those teams, Cheryl, that you mentioned, that they would win a championship one year, and then the next year they would have maybe a unsuccessful season. And I always wondered why. But you make a good point in that maybe they don't think differently, and maybe it's just repetitive and it's the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll give you an example. So in 2001, we went and played in Minneapolis, and we played the Americans in the final, which at that time had been, it's pretty, you know, that's what happened most often. And we won, and we probably shouldn't have. I mean, what I mean, our goaltender stood on her head. We had some, we scored on our opportunities, but we were outshot. I mean, they pretty much, I felt, dominated. And that following year, we went into our Olympic cycle, and the Americans were better. I mean, they were better. And it had kind of happened overnight because we were winning when we probably shouldn't have. And you get that W in the column, and so you don't look anymore, right? You stop looking. Oh, I hit my marker, and you were there. But unfortunately, we weren't there. We were looking at it because we'd won one. We won the world championships, and the next year, we lost 8 straight games heading into the Olympics. Every game we played, like every single game. That's a lot of losses, Vince. That's a lot of losses, especially when you're expected to win. And I mean, that's a whole other hour-long pod about what we went through as a group. But when we came out of that, we were playing catch up. And I know for myself, I looked at my training differently that next summer and pushing the envelope. But when we won, I mean, the Americans in '02 were probably a stronger, individually comprised team, if I say that, because or team, because they won 8 straight games. I mean, we were 0 for 8. We were over. And we came out with one in the end. But, I think it's because we stopped looking. We stopped re-evolving or reinventing ways in which we could think differently. And so now when everyone, we used to complain about that. Well, why are we doing this when they're out having dinner? Or why, and they're like, well, if you wanna hit that number one marker, then you can't be like everyone else, right? And you can't be doing what everyone else is doing. So stay ahead of the curve. Stay ahead of the curve.
I guess this is a good segue, Cheryl, to ask you what are your thoughts on women's hockey and where do you think the future and the growth?
Well, I think it's pretty amazing. My first world championships, I could look up into the stands, find my parents, find my grandma, and like literally go, hi. By my last world championships in Winnipeg, it was sold out standing room, everything was gone. And so, you see that evolution of the game. I've got young girls, they've been playing the game since they were 3 or 4, who's pushing. But we're a bit at a stall right now. I think something needs to be done. I mean, the PWHPA is a great group that are sort of leading the charge here and trying to make a difference, trying to get women's hockey a platform to leverage from with resources, and less concerned about sort of today, building a league of, a professional culture, not just the product on the ice, but the professional culture, your own room, and those things that just are taken for granted in those environments and professional environments that these women just don't have. So, they really need the support of, whether it's the NHL, it's not a group that can say, you know what, we're going to make change for the better. And I always say, these women are doing it not just for themselves today, not to get a paycheck tomorrow, but to build something that's going to last, that is going to get them to the platform they need to be at. Similar to, say, the WNBA. It took time, and women's hockey is decades behind that right now. So how do we get there so that my daughters, or the ones younger than my daughters, the 6, the 7-year-olds, don't have to be going through this in 10, 12 years time, and they're not the same spot. So, I'm, a real charge for this is let's get these women. I mean, you got our Olympic heroes, Marie-Philippe Poulin, like you've got our, Jana Hefford, is at the helm of this. Let's get on board, people, right? Let's get these women the platform that they've earned, and they deserve, so that the young girls of today can go watch them and say, that's where I want to be. And so, the growth, to me, the opportunity is astounding, because talent, the talent of these women, it is unbelievable to watch them. The quick release shooting, the strides, the skating, the strength, the power, and what the time and effort they put into their craft is unbelievable. And it's time that it's out there, on a regular basis, not just every 4 years when people tune in and, they become so often the most watched at the Olympics. So let's tune in now. And I think the time is now. I really, really believe that.
So do I. And one of the things, Cheryl, that I would like to see as a fan is we often see tennis, the men's and women, are on television. I would like to see men and women of hockey leagues be on television as well.
Well, and that's key, because I mean, they're one of the coin phrases, to see it, to believe it. And but when my daughters were young, you turn on the television and it's NHL, right? It's what they see, and that's fine because NHL is great. It's an unbelievable product. It's entertaining. It's all of these things. But I have a young daughter that knows Natalie Spooner and that knows, watches Sarah Nurse, and they want to see them. And so why isn't that available? Why isn't that readily available when, you know, the grassroots have been growing, and they're asking those questions. Hey, mom, why can't why can't I see that? And hey, mom, I want to be there one day. And so I'm a coach of two female hockey teams, and these girls are itching for that, and they want to be there. So let's let them see it. Let's let them see it. And I think that's what these women are trying to do. Um, they're trying to do this not just for themselves, but for a generation to the next generation to come and have what they did not have. And I think they feel if it continues on the road it is on, we'll be talking the same story in 15 years. So they're taking a stand to really try and create something that's deserved and better.
Yeah, now is the time for change, Cheryl. I
Yeah.
100% agree. And I think the pandemic has kind of allowed a lot of people to think of the new way
Yeah.
in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Before Cheryl, that we go, I wanted to ask you about your podcast because I've been listening for the past couple weeks since we've connected, and
Yeah.
just tell us what it's about. And it's on
Yeah.
TSN. And
Yeah, so Kate, I mean, Kate is just she's an unbelievable broadcaster, and I had the opportunity to work with her with CBC at the Olympics in Pyeongchang, and we were working on the desk. We just had a ton of fun. I felt like it was very natural. It flowed. We'd be doing live television, we'd be laughing, and it just was a very natural um, relationships. Considering we'd never ever met before that, and so we knew there was chemistry there. We loved working together, and she sort of approached me about, what do you think of the Hermark Pod? And so one of the things with her is she really believes in the empowerment of women, and she does a youth summit every year for young girls and introduces them to sport and brings out Olympians and speakers and nutritionists. And it's just a fabulous day celebrating these young women and empowerment. And she came to me and said, I'm thinking about having her Mark podcast. Would you like to co-host it with me? And the emphasis will be on just strong women who tell their stories, but also strong men who've advocated and mentored with these women. I remember speaking to Lisa Laflamme, and Lloyd Robertson was hers, and so we need allies and great men to model us and to help us as well. And so the idea here is just let's tell our stories and let's have some fun with it, and let's try and get, whether it be strong athletes, of course that's more our network, but also strong business women and people who have made their mark, and who want to continue to leave a mark. And so therefore it was kind of called Her Mark, and sort of really just a collective voice that just shares valuable story, and some of them very vulnerable and real, and I guess authentic. And so it's been a lot of fun, and obviously sometimes I'm like, oh, do I let my kids listen to this one? But no, it was a lot of fun, enjoyment, and a lot of learning, again, because you're talking to people who have a story. And sometimes I find myself just listening, like just sitting there, listening, going, wow, the journey you've been on. And so people just sharing their journeys and trying to help others.
thank you so much for doing this. Really been a pleasure an honor to hear your story and thoughts. Couldn't thank you more. Massive fan. All the best.
You too, Vince. Good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks, Cheryl.